Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. The Taliban say they welcome and support the exit of all U.S. and NATO troops from the Bagram air base. Talking to the media, a spokesperson said a complete pullout will pave the way for Afghans to decide their future. Earlier, two U.S. defense officials said the American military has left its main base at Afghanistan after nearly 20 years. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip, violating the fragile ceasefire with Hamas for a third time. The Israel Defense Forces allege that the attack was in response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave. Indian troops have martyred another civilian in the Pulwama district of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youth was targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Rajpura area. India's death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 400,000 after the country logged 853 daily deaths. In Pakistan, 24 people lost their lives and more than 1,200 people tested positive in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3.9 million lives and infected more than 182 million people so far. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back. The Taliban say they welcome and support the exit of all U.S. and NATO troops from the Bagram air base. Talking to the media, a spokesperson said a complete pullout will pave the way for Afghans to decide their future. Earlier, two U.S. defense officials said the American military has left its main base in Afghanistan. The sprawling air base has been the center of operations against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda for nearly 20 years. Meanwhile, the Taliban say they have captured Paktika's Zurmat district, seizing vehicles and ammunition, whereas Kabul says it has killed at least 125 fighters during operations in Herat, Helmand, and Kandahar province. Indian troops have martyred another civilian in the Pulwama district of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youth was targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Rajpura area. The extrajudicial military operation of the occupying forces is still underway. The forces have claimed 384 Kashmiri lives since the revocation of the occupied valley status in August 2019. Israeli fighter jets have launched air raids on the Gaza Strip, violating the fragile ceasefire with Hamas for the third time. The Israel Defense Forces allege that the attack was in response to incendiary balloons launched from the enclave.
In a tweet, the Israeli military claimed it struck a weapon manufacturing site belonging to Hamas. The resistance movement has not commented on the incident so far. Meanwhile, Hamas has denounced recent remarks by German President Walter Steinmeier. Steinmeier told Israeli media that ICC has no jurisdiction to investigate Israeli war crimes in Palestinian territories. A Hamas spokesperson said the comments show Berlin's bias towards Israel's aggressive policies. In another development, Israeli soldiers injured 61 Palestinians in a clampdown on a protest in West Bank's Nablus city. While in Jerusalem city, the regime forces arrested 3 Palestinians.
Russia says NATO is purposely destabilizing the Black Sea with its Sea Breeze 21 joint military exercise. A foreign ministry spokesperson said the drills cannot be called friendly or regular, but are politically driven. In a briefing, Maria Zurkova said the United States and allies are turning the area into a conflict zone. She said the drills are an attempt to make another region unstable under Washington's guidance. The spokesperson termed the multinational naval exercise openly anti-Russian and provocative muscle flexing. Led by Ukraine, the yearly exercises are being held in the Black Sea and involve the United States, NATO, and 30 other states. The Arab coalition in Yemen says it has destroyed an explosive land drone launched by the Houthis towards southern Saudi Arabia.
In a statement, a coalition spokesperson said Yemeni rebels attempted to target Khamis Mushed city. The U.S. State Department says Washington is beyond fed up and horrified by the repeated Houthi attacks inside Yemen. In a press briefing, the department spokesperson Ned Price said the assaults are exacerbating Yemen's humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, the Yemeni government and the UAE Southern Transitional Council have agreed to stop all forms of escalation against each other. Saudi state media said both sides held a meeting in the Saudi capital to discuss the implementation of the Riyadh initiative.
In Niger, the military says Boko Haram fighters have killed 4 civilians and injured another 2 in an attack in the southeast. Niger's mixed multinational force said the militants intercepted a passenger bus on the road between Diffa and Mainsoura. In a statement, the force said that the militants later ambushed the soldiers. It said the military killed 13 fighters in ensuing clashes, while 6 soldiers were injured. The force said that it seized 1 vehicle, 4 AK-47 rifles, and a large quantity of munitions. The mixed multinational force is made up of troops from Nigeria, Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. India's death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 400,000 after the country logged 853 daily deaths. Globally, the virus has claimed over 3.9 million lives and infected more than 182 million people so far.
Amid the spread of Delta variant, the emergence of new COVID-induced diseases and vaccine controversies are threatening gains made in the fight against the pandemic. Scientists are warning that after black fungus in India, more dangerous and even deadly fungal infections have spawned in critically ill coronavirus patients globally. In Bangladesh, the streets of the capital Dhaka are eerily empty, except for soldiers implementing a national lockdown. The Delta variant is also said to badly impact summer tourism, which is vital to southern Europe's economies. Meanwhile, a nighttime curfew is imposed in several Portuguese municipalities as authorities scramble to contain a surge.
The government decided that in municipalities with high or very high risk, with an incidence rate of 120 or 240, there will be a restriction of circulation on public roads from 11 p.m. We are not in a position to consider the pandemic under control, and I urge everyone to continue to comply with the rules and to avoid risky behavior.
Thailand has reported record deaths for the 3rd day in a row. Indonesia is tripling its oxygen supplies to hospitals as the Delta variant worsens the outbreak. The variant has also driven South Korea's daily count of cases to the highest level in nearly 6 months. Meanwhile, Australia has announced to halve the number of international arrivals as Canberra battles to contain outbreaks of the Delta variant.
To temporarily reduce commercial inbound passenger arrivals to all major ports by 50% from current caps to reduce the pressure on quarantine facilities due to the increased risks of the Delta strain of the virus.
The White House has sent out special teams to hotspots across the country to combat the Indian strain. Over on the south, sanctions hit Venezuela has begun administering Cuba's Abdala vaccine in the country. Meanwhile, the African Union has slammed the EU for hoarding vaccine supplies, saying not a single jab was sent to Africa.
Pakistan has reported 24 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. The health ministry says the toll has risen to 22,345. It says nearly 1,300 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry says that out of over 959,000 cases, more than 905,000 people have recovered. It notes there are nearly 32,000 active cases in the country, of which over 1,800 are critical. Pakistan has administered more than 16 million doses of coronavirus vaccines to date. The government says 2.5 million doses of the U.S. donated Moderna vaccine will arrive on Friday. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has urged Myanmar's military to release Aung San Suu Kyi with President Win Myint. His spokesperson Eric Kanko made the statement a day after thousands of other detainees were freed. Kaneko expressed the UN's deep concern over the continued violence and arbitrary arrest by security forces. Earlier, the ruling military said they released detainees held on incitement charges for taking part in the protests. According to an activist group, the military has killed at least 885 people and detained over 6,400 people since the coup. Protesters have pulled down statues of British royals in the Canadian city of Winnipeg. The country's treatment of Indigenous children and the discovery of unmarked graves has sparked public anger. A large statue of Queen Victoria was defaced with red spray paint, while its base was covered in red handprints. A smaller statue of Elizabeth was also toppled, as both royals are seen as representatives of the country's colonial history. Meanwhile, a Cancel Canada Day march in the capital, Ottawa, turned into a sea of orange. Thousands rallied wearing orange shirts to honor the victims and the survivors of Canada's residential school system. Vigils and rallies were also held across other parts of the country. In the United States, 5 people have been injured after a small building collapsed during a construction in Washington, D.C. The Fire and Emergency Medical Services say the building came down during a severe thunderstorm. 4 construction workers were immediately pulled from the wreckage, while 1 remained trapped for almost 2 hours before being rescued. The rescue service says no worker has life-threatening injuries. In Canada, a wildfire that began after record-breaking temperatures has destroyed most of Lytton in British Columbia. Parliamentarian Brad Viss said the town has sustained structural damage and 90% of the village was reduced to ashes. He added that the fire also caused extensive damage to hydro stations and highways, limiting access to Lytton by road. The government officials have given out fresh evacuation orders as more wildfires tear through the province. Earlier, British Columbia Premier John Horgan said more than 1,000 people in Lytton were evacuated. Nearly 500 people have died due to record-breaking heat over the last 5 days in British Columbia. In the Philippines, authorities are evacuating thousands of families living close to an island volcano in Batangas province. The alert for the tall volcano of South Milana has moved to level 3 after it spewed a high plum of gas and steam. A presidential spokesperson said the government has deployed military to help move the residents away from the danger zone. In a statement, he asked the residents to remain vigilant and cooperate with authorities should the need for evacuation arise. The seismology agency said that the towns of Anglosilo and Laurel are in danger from the eruption and volcanic tsunami. The agency said it has recorded 29 volcanic earthquakes in the past 24 hours. Tall spewed clouds of ash in January last year, prompting the evacuation of more than 100,000 people. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. An 82-year-old woman will be flying into space along with the Amazon founder Jeff Bezos later this month. Wally Funk will be the oldest person ever to travel into space on the first crewed flight from rocket company Blue Origin. Funk was the youngest of 13 women who passed NASA's astronaut training program in the 1960s. But they were denied the chance to become astronauts because of their gender. Funk was the first woman flight instructor at a U.S. military base. She was also the first woman to become an air safety investigator for the National Transportation Safety Board. She is due to join Bezos' brother, Mark, aboard the New Shepard rocket, as it ascends more than 62 miles above Earth to suborbital space. The passengers will experience a few minutes of weightlessness and marvel at the planet's curvature through viewing windows. In northern Italy, extraordinary measures are undertaken every year to save the Parsina Glacier from melting. More about the unique method in this report.
Experts say approximately 70% of the snow can be saved from melting over the summer season with a protective covering. A protective covering has been placed over an area of some 120,000 square meters on the Parsina Glacier in an operation that took nearly a month. A glaciologist from the Trento Science Museum, Christian Casarotto, said the covering basically works in the same way as a reflective window guard.
Sono delle strisce larghe 5 metri.
They are 5 meter wide and 70 meter long strips that are laid across the glacier at the end of the winter season. This slows down the melting of the snow on the surface. Imagine that silver cloth that we put on the dashboard of our car in the summer. Without the sheet, our black dashboard gets hotter, unlike with the sheet on top, and it warms up less.
Experts follow what is called mass balance to study the effects of climate change. Casarato explained it has experienced a downward trend in the last 15 to 20 years, leading to the reduction in the mass of glaciers.
Quindi ci si porta sugli...
The difference between the winter snow accumulation and the summer snow melt gives us the net balance. That is, how much the glacier has gained if the snow accumulations have been higher, or how much the glacier has lost if the losses have been higher. That's what we've been experiencing now for the last 15 to 20 years. A continuous downward trend and therefore a reduction in mass of our glaciers.
Casarato explained how studying glaciers can teach us about the direction we are headed towards. According to him, the study arms us with the knowledge we need to correct our course and make sustainable policies for the betterment of future generations.
European markets are trading modestly higher as investors await the closely watched U.S. jobs report that is due later in the day. Frankfurt's DAX, London's FTSE, and the Pan-European Stock 600 have edged up fractionally. The CAC 40 in Paris and Italy's FTSE MIB are trading flat. It's now time to take a look at the weather updates from around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.